Got any others? Why don't we see more healings either at Woodland Hills Church or in general? It seems like it was a regular occurrence in the early church. When did this change? Man, he's killing me out here. You see, Israelite faith, we got to be able to ask everything. I mean, you got to put it out there. And that means we don't get life by having the right answers or think we have all the answers. We get our life from Jesus Christ alone, and that frees us to be honest with questions. So I appreciate the gutsy questions. And so let's move on to the next one now. You know what? Yeah, I'll be honest with you. This question hits one of the areas where I have, in the past, not so much right now, but I've started through some discouragement with this. Because everything in my theology says we ought to be seeing a manifestation of the kingdom on the physical realm. There's nothing in the New Testament that indicates that miracles were supposed to stop. And so it's bugged me. It's honestly bugged me a lot sometimes. Where I get, so I'll say this about it. Here's where I'm at. It was everywhere in the ministry of Jesus and in the early church. We see that the miracles and the healings begin to die out around in the 2nd century. People start noticing that. And by the end of the 2nd century, you even find some theologians starting to theologize about why that is the case. Origen starts to speculate about why there's not as many miracles now as there was. By the time you get to the 4th century, you find Augustine being the first one to suggest that maybe it was only supposed to be for the early church. First dispensationalists. The dispensationalist is the one who said that was all for a different dispensation. Although then Augustine, towards the end of his life, he was a bishop over Hippo in Africa, not over a hippo, but there's a place called Hippo. Hippo, I'm your bishop. You too, rhinoceros. He was a bishop, and a town under his jurisdiction had an outbreaking of miracles. All of a sudden, a bunch of people got healed. And even some folks who were, the dead were raised, and so it convinced him that he was wrong. I guess miracles are still happening. But here's how I think about it. This is how I envision it, and it's, if it works, fine. If it doesn't, then think of something better. But if you look at history, that's all you do, you find that there are miracles and healings and stuff, they come in pockets, almost always. There's an outbreaking. Early church, you had a lot of it going on. It lasted for about a century, but then it stopped. And then you have revivals happening throughout history. Sometimes centered around one person, sometimes around a movement. Sometimes they last for a week, sometimes they last for a couple of years, but they eventually fade away. And I get the picture in my mind that it's something like this. I don't think it's just I don't think it's just because we lack faith. I don't think it's that. There's other things going on. That is one variable, perhaps, but we have to understand that we're in a world that is oppressed by spiritual powers like a cloud around the earth. I picture God's power and God's kingdom is like the light of the sun. And our earth is under this dark, heavy cloud of demonic oppression. And once in a while, for reasons that are far too complex, going back to the beginning of time that we can never know, we're able to punch a hole in the cloud so the sun shines through. Now, the sun's always breaking through and getting people saved and stuff, but it seems like it takes more sun to break through to see healings and stuff like that. And once in a while, we're able to punch a hole in those clouds. And the sun breaks through, and there's an outbreak of revival. But eventually, the hole gets covered up again. And then, a century later or a year later, whenever, another hole gets punched. The cloud's not equal all over the earth. You go to some third world countries, and they do see more miracles than we have here today. And some of it's maybe because they have more faith, but some of it maybe has to do with things that we can't ever begin to realize because it's too complex. It's in the spiritual realm, going back to the beginning of history. And so we just got to accept it for what it is. Bottom line is, I don't know why it happens the way it does. One gal I just talked to a couple of years ago, she was a doctor in Mozambique, and they always pray for people, but they also practice medicine when they go to these tribes out in the bush, what they call it, in the bush, and they once in a while will see a little miracle here and there, but they came to this one town, this little village out in the bush, and this guy got healed, his eyesight got healed. He turned out to be the witch doctor of the whole village, and so he gave his heart to Christ, and then for the next week, she said, everything they prayed for got healed. Goiters disappeared. It was incredible. It lasted about 5 days, and then boom, it stopped, and then they went back to business as usual. It's just, so, in my mind, here's how I think about it, is that that's an idea I have. I think there's something like that that's going on, but it doesn't affect at all how I'm going to live. I take my marching orders from the Word, not from my experience, and so I'm just going to keep plowing that way. I'm going to keep envisioning healings happening. I'm going to keep pressing that way. Amen. I encourage you to be doing the same. You just keep plowing. You just keep plowing. And I don't get into indictment, blaming yourself. Oh, we must really suck as Christians because no healings happen. You know, I've been there too, and it's not productive. It's not productive. No, you know, see it as vividly as you can. Press towards it. And who knows, maybe one of these days we're going to start seeing a lot of stuff happening. In the meantime, we just keep plowing forward.